Sometimes you see a building and wonder what the inscription means. One day, while I was visiting Orangeburg in 2019, I noticed this building and the faded inscription that says I.S. Harley, 1882-1903. I wondered, who is I.S. Harley? Irvin Sylvanus Harvey was born in Orangeburg County, about 15 miles from Orangeburg, on January 17, 1854. He was the son of John Harley and Mrs. Mahaly Bullock Harley. Mahala died when Irving was 3, and he lived with his grandma, Mrs. Mary Carn Bullock. In 1882, Mary died, and Irving moved to Orangeburg to seek his fortune by starting a mercantile business with only $95 in his pocket. There were no other opportunities for work in existing mercantiles in Orangeburg, so he set out a canvas tent and stocked it with some supplies. By 1903, he had moved from a canvas tent on the street to his large I.S. Harley building. Irvin had been a member of the Orangeburg City Council and president of the Farmers and Merchants Bank for several years. He was married 3 times. In 1975, he married Mrs. Laura Whitsell, and she died in 1887. He then married Mrs. Olivia Whitsell, but she also died about 5 years later. In 1897, he married Mrs. Fanny Ruppel. Irvin died on January 23, 1918. Irvin's son, Clifton and Irvin Jr., joined his cousin Hampty Dukes to create the Dukes-Harley Funeral Home. Hampty started the funeral home in 1896. I found most of this biography in a book called Men of Mark in South Carolina, Volume 3. For a researcher or genealogist, this type of biography is gold. But as any good researcher would do, I needed a fact check and try to expand the information. I used 2 major sources of information, Find a Grave and newspapers.com. I was able to fact check Find a Grave by using publicly posted family trees on WikiTrees. I did some genealogy work on the 2 Whitsell wives. Curiosity got me because I wondered if those 2 women were related. I couldn't prove it on paper, but they were both from the same town and they both have the same last name. And while their trees don't directly line up to each other with publicly available information, I did find something I was not expecting. What I did find was that Irvin and Laura Whitsell were actually related. They were second cousins. They actually had a shared person on their family tree of Daniel Carn Sr. and Mary Pendervis, which was his beloved grandmother's parents. To try to figure out exactly where he was born, since the biography listed about 15 miles from Orangeburg, I first did a radius map to kind of get an idea of where that might be. What I found is about 15 miles from Orangeburg is a town that happens to be where a majority of his ancestors are buried. Irving's grandmother was buried in the Carn family cemetery, which is outside of Bowman, South Carolina. Researching the family tree, I found that the majority of the family was from Bowman, so I would infer that Irvin was also born there. This is my first episode, so I really would like some feedback from you, the viewer. I need a few suggestions of interesting people or interesting buildings in the towns across South Carolina. Leave a comment below with some interesting people or places that you think would make a great video. If you own an old property, whether it's a home or a commercial business, reach out to me at exploresc.org and send me an email with some more information, because I would really like to know the information, but you might not want that public. Bonus if you're a restaurant, because I like to try different foods. I'm Chris Tollefson. Thank you for watching. Irvin's grandmother was buried in a cemetery. Of course she was, duh.